Ladies and gentlemen, this video, exposing the grift, the critical drinker by the Birdman. Now, let me say this straight up, I am going to turn this bird into Kentucky Fried Frickin' Chicken because this dude is dripping with dishonesty. And unlike some people, because I'm European, I am not. I do my homework and I bring all of the receipts. So one of my subs told me to check this video out. I had no idea who this person is. First time for me, flying in blind. Even though one interaction on the Twitter with him later and he already blocked me, because the truth hurts and he's limp-wristed and rather brittle, but anyway. Within about 3 minutes into this laughable circus hellscape, I could see why I was sent this, because it is comedic levels of appalling and loaded with more arse than Diddy's hard drive. The man goes out of his way to claim he is apolitical. Listen here, Junior, this is not my first rodeo with your ilk, and I can already tell you're sent from a mile off. You reek of shit because you're full of it. But rather than merely telling you guys all of this, why don't we let him show us? So let us take a gander at the first 3 minutes of the unhinged cringe that is this video, shall we? That's right, within 10 seconds into the video and the word Nazi is already mentioned.
The entire argumentation on Twitter can be summed up as Marvel movies and World War II. Like, this is the extent of human knowledge that these people are allowed to bathe in.
As I said before, it's disturbing how much mileage I can get out of that clip.
The illusory truth effect is a phenomenon that was first detailed in a 1977 study. It's the inclination of people to believe false information after being exposed to that false information many times.
You mean like believing someone is a threat to democracy after hearing it over and over again on a daily basis?
Repeated exposure to lies caused the false information to feel familiar to the participants. In that study, they found out that the more familiar the information feels, the more likely that familiarity overpowers a person's rationality.
I mean, that's leftism in a nutshell.
In other words, the more you hear something, the more it feels right.
And then you do crazy stuff, like wait in the bushes with a rifle for 10 hours to take a shot at a former president.
Further studies showed that the illusory truth effect could even make people have false memories, and that people with names that were easier to pronounce were more readily believed by participants of the study. This is a powerful psychological tool that grifters employ on their audience, and its effects are seen every single day. How many times have you heard vaccines cause autism, or go woke, go broke? There is a reason these people repeat these mantras over and over, even in the face of conflicting evidence, and that's because repeating false information—
Alright, let's pause here for a moment. Now, what do you notice about the thumbnails and the content creators? Conflicting evidence, you say. Yeah, it's not like tanking box office numbers or headlines like these might be telling you all is not right at Disney or something now, is it?
makes it more likely to be believed. Here's a network graph of the phrase go woke, go broke on Twitter from August 2022 to February 2023. The blue represents left-leaning users, while the red represents right-leaning users. The irony of the shape formed by right-wingers isn't lost on me. A literal dickhead. This brings me to the subject of this video, Will Jordan, aka The Critical Drinker. Tell me, how many times have you heard him say, "The message"? What's up, everyone? It's your friendly neighborhood Birdman here. Today, I'm going to question why people believe this grifter and show you precisely why you shouldn't. Due to the kinds of people this video is sure to attract, I think I need to put my cards on the table. Firstly, I am not a political type. I rarely, if ever, bring up politics, and when I do, it's usually to make fun of them, left or right.
It's been not even 3 minutes into this video, you opened with a sentence featuring the phrase "a fucking Nazi," spoke about believing false narratives, and then featured a collage of culturally right-leaning content creators, pointing out that leftist pandering pieces don't sell, and then topped it off by insinuating right-wingers are dickheads. Cut the crap, Junior. If you project left any harder, someone's gonna ask you your preferred fucking pronouns.
For this behavior, I have been routinely called right-wing and left-wing by people who make politics their entire identity.
Yeah, because pulling up an old tweet featuring random people on your comment section without context months ago is really gonna sell me on your pitiful attempt to appear above the fray. You've done a great job of it so far. How about I pull up that tweet, seeing as I do my homework? Let's look at one of them, shall we? Read this tweet for yourself. Pause the video. I follow evidence, not political leaders. You follow people trying to get money out of you. My good God, talk about arrogant delusion. I mean, this is peak blue-pilled midwit stuff right here. Everything about this man so far screams pseudo-intellectual huffing of own farts. When you're siding with people standing in the middle of traffic holding banners and gluing their hands to the tarmac, implying those people are driven by science, yeah, you should really evaluate your life at that point. Also, I would love to see you do something about me. Please fuck around and find out exactly how liberal these hands are. Oh yeah, and of course, wanting to fight with random strangers on the internet. Way to defy the stereotype. Again, this is one man's attempt to sell you all the idea that he is somehow the enlightened centrist immune to bias. Newsflash here, Junior, this is an away game for you and this is my home turf. We're 3 minutes into this video, we haven't even heard anything about drinkers' opinions. This is a pitch to establish some form of credibility. Frankly, that says more about his perception of the intelligence of those around him, or rather lack thereof. Then again, he's an actor living in Los Angeles. Need I say more?
My position is that political folk are mirror images of each other participating in the Spider-Man meme, where they blame each other for doing exactly what they themselves are doing.
Okay, I already disliked him before, but this just cranked it up a gear for me. And it shows he is far too intellectually shallow to engage in politics, and frankly, there's many people who have this exact same problem. It's basically a version of the genetic fallacy, what I call the action by faction perspective. These are people who cannot separate the action from the political alignment. And from what I can tell, most people can't do this. They have this particular worldview where the structures and rules are permanently set in stone and they can never change. They really struggle when you pitch them any abstract concepts. Any faction can and does use force to enforce a worldview. This is any civilization. What matters is the justification for that use of force, a concept that most people can't seem to understand, probably because liberalism has severely retarded the scope of their worldview.
Something the drinker is heavily guilty of. I think it's silly to adhere to political sides because at some point in time, you're going to have to defend nonsense to maintain the integrity of being on that side.
Oh, the irony, seeing as he does that in this very video, and comes across as completely insane for doing so.
The only side I'm on is reason, logic, facts, science, and math.
Spoken like a man who knows nothing of power. You're a leftist. By default, your worldview revolves around actively ignoring all of those things. In fact, you yourself will show that to be the case throughout this entire video.
So believe me.
Yeah, I'm not going to.
When I criticize this very obviously right-wing chud, I'm doing so out of the spirit and integrity of unbiased media discourse, which is something I care about deeply.
Right-wing chud. Believe me, by the end of this video, there will be no doubt in anyone's head you are nothing of what you claim to be. You're extremely biased and the concept of integrity is completely foreign to your person. That's the introduction. Anyone who is remotely clued into the political landscape might guess you're kinda left. Someone like myself who runs on pattern recognition, something I strongly suspect he's not terribly familiar with, a suspicion that grew stronger the longer the video went on, might have stronger opinions. In fact, I'll skip ahead and give you my summary of this man, just based on this video. He is a deeply closeted, raging leftist, has a clear prejudice against Europeans, especially ones he thinks are right-wing, couldn't be more envious of Drinker's success if it was tattooed on his damn forehead, and much like every other leftist, has his head so far up his own ass, high on his own smug sense of moral superiority, thoroughly convinced of his own intelligence because he follows and obeys the authoritative sources like the good little pleb that he is, and wouldn't be able to concoct an original thought of his own if his life depended on it, all cloaked in a tone dripping with passive-aggressive pretentiousness. In so many ways, he is a thoroughly unimpressive dime-a-dozen walking cliché. I think you'll find my assessment rather satisfactory.
Less important, but still worth a mention, I'm not doing this out of jealousy or an attempt to clout chase.
The word you're looking for is envy. And yes, you are, you're just bad at it.
I've been calling out a much bigger YouTuber for nearly 7 years.
The fact you have to mention the size tells us you're in it for the clout.
For me, this is simply calling out another bad critic. That out of the way, it's difficult to know where to even start with this guy. He is absolutely rich with misinformation, outright lies, and baffling takes that don't stand up to even an ounce of scrutiny.
That is a case of projection so strong you could power the Las Vegas Strip with it. But let's see how you stand up to my scrutiny. And yes, I did skip the first bit here. It involves a film I haven't seen yet, so I can't speak on the perspective. I'm only going with what I can use here.
Will's goal with many of his film reviews is to galvanize his mostly male, mostly white, and mostly straight audience around the idea that they are being attacked for being those three things.
Has anybody else noticed so far we have heard nothing but left-wing talking points? Meanwhile, in the real world,
in America, there's a thing about both white vigilantism and white tears, particularly male white tears.
Biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized to the right.
This is Jim Crow, this is Jane Crow. The real religion, the real politics in America is whiteness and whiteness unhinged.
When we allude to people as an invasion, as an infestation, we are directly pulling from the language of white supremacy.
Yeah, I'm sure there's nothing to see here at all. It's not like Hollywood ever gets involved with political affairs, right?
Bryan Cranston! Chris Rock is in the house! Ben Stiller, Jennifer Lopez, Tracy Ellis Ross.
Oh yeah, but you only follow facts and reason and logic. You disingenuous snake, get fucked.
You do this often enough, and the audience will begin to believe it.
This is not gonna end well for you, Junior.
Hence, that atrocious reading of Across the Spider-Verse. But it gets even better. Here he is doing the same thing to the Batman.
There seems to be a bit of a debate going on about whether or not this movie is woke, mainly because of the demographics of certain characters. And to be fair, there is a bit of evidence to support this claim. If I was a cynical man, I'd say it's kind of interesting that the rich, corrupt scumbags targeted by the Riddler all happen to be straight, white, middle-aged men, but hey, I guess that's just a total coincidence.
Seriously, what the fuck does this movie have to do with race?
In case you were wondering, yes, the entire video is full of moments like this. Moments that rely on the audience being full of complete morons who haven't paid a lick of attention to the entertainment ecosphere for the last 10 years.
He has straight white men in his mouth so often, you'd think he was an escort. If he applied even a little of that gray matter, maybe he'd come to the conclusion that most rich people in our society tend to be white men.
Ah, yes, because we're all terribly familiar with Hollywood's fastidious desire to represent the real world constantly. Do tell me something. If there's a scene involving someone committing a violent crime, would it be fair then to assume there's a more than 50% chance it should be someone black? I mean, if I'm being consistent with your own logic here. I notice he conveniently left out the aspect of villainy and focused purely on the demographic representation, as if demographic accuracy is in any way a concern for Hollywood. It's not like Hollywood has actors like Kumail Nanjiani who said it's very difficult to find bad guy roles because Hollywood, in an effort to appear diverse and inclusive, ends up only casting European men as the bad guys, which coincidentally robs non-European actors of the chance to expand their acting repertoire. Then again, considering the casting couch is a thing, I have a hard time believing Hollywood actually cares about the integrity of its performers, or their craft for that matter. Man, this critique is so lazy. This is disingenuous, but this is veering off into inadequacy.
The Riddler was going after police officers and politicians, and again, in our society, they tend to be white. What Drinker is asking for here is diversity, but only amongst the villains of the film.
No, it's simply noticing a lack of people of color as the villains because, unlike you, he's not a blind moron trying to push a narrative.
Moreover, what he's conveniently leaving out is Riddler also attempted to assassinate the mayor-elect, a black woman.
Which is supposed to mean what exactly?
If all of this wasn't baffling enough, he himself states this film isn't about race.
And to be fair, Kravitz and Jeffrey Wright both do a great job with the roles they're given, and apart from one poorly judged line from Catwoman right at the end, race never really comes into the picture. So I guess what I'm saying here is that while the movie takes a few little stabs at modern day social issues, it really never dominates the narrative.
Does he even hear himself?
Do you? Because going off what I just heard, he went by the inclusion of people of color is woke. Considering the effort to tokenize everything that isn't a European man as political pawns, such an inkling simply stems from pattern recognition. I told you he isn't good at this, but then says that they perform competently at their roles. What are you even trying to imply here? If this is you trying to draft up a smear campaign, go back to the drawing board, Junior. You're still a cheap amateur.
Listen to this incredible leap in logic for Godzilla vs. Kong.
And oh look, Kong's been abducted from his homeland and taken across the ocean to America in chains. I mean, there's on-the-nose writing, and then there's next-level stuff like this. I wonder who you're supposed to sympathize with here.
Yes, Drinker just called African slaves apes and tried to frame it as the screenwriters doing so. That, my children, is what we in the English-speaking world call projection. And like almost every observation this guy makes, it's hilariously wrong. They're not even taking Kong to America. They're going to Antarctica in this scene. So not only did he get the scene wrong, he saw racial themes in a film where there are none because his brain immediately goes to black people when he sees an ape in chains.
Oh, this bit. Oh, this bit shows you just how dishonest and underhanded this asshole really is. How about we look at what Drinker actually said, shall we?
And oh look, Kong's been abducted from his homeland and taken across the ocean to America in chains.
Notice where this was taken from. Maybe that's the reason why he didn't know where they were going. Because it's from the fucking trailer, you duplicitous sack of shit. This is a dirty-ass hit job. This is a loser's attempt to denigrate a superior who will forever possess far greater influence than he ever will. A deeply envious wanker with no integrity whatsoever, who will lie and use race to smear somebody else's character. Oh wait, you're a leftist. Why am I remotely surprised at this? Oh, and by the way, thank you for showing us your deceitfulness nice and early in the video. It's very thoughtful of you. Now I can spend the rest of this video casting doubt and denigrating your character, seeing as you've demonstrated you have none.
The only side I'm on is reason, logic, facts, science, and math.
I think we can safely say that sentiment has gone up in smoke. What despicable shamelessness. You wouldn't know integrity if a drop kicked you in your damn teeth.
In my last video, I showed a tweet by Drinker that I thought made it painfully obvious what his positions on black people in the media were.
Would you care to show it in this video? I thought you said you weren't trying to clout chase. I'm sure it's totally a coincidence that one of your latest tweets is about the Drinker, even though this video is 2 weeks old, and you're still calling him a grifter. Moving on.
What I didn't account for was the insane mental gymnastics people would perform in order to deny that his post was racist in nature.
Oh yeah, people, he is quite literally the poster boy defending DEI and screaming racist at anyone who dare possess his basic pattern recognition skills. I told you he's a closeted leftist.
So here's a tweet from a different person. If you're unfamiliar, this person is Nick Fuentes, a proud white supremacist. Sounds contradictory, I know, what with being a Mexican and having a name like Fuentes while being a white supremacist, but no one ever said white supremacists were intelligent.
Oh yeah, because calling everyone racist is quite the sign of the higher IQ. Given what you've thrown here so far, I would bet heavily he would utterly decimate you in a debate. But notice what he's trying to do here. It's very simple. X is a racist and therefore automatically wrong because moral superiority. And so anyone that remotely agrees with X is automatically as reprehensible and also wrong. Because in the mind of this race-baiting git, being branded as racist makes you objectively wrong about literally everything. It's very convenient that, isn't it? Naturally, of course, I do not believe in such a worldview because it's politics, and politics is ludicrous bollocks.
The point is, doesn't this tweet seem to be placing emphasis on a specific character in the Minecraft movie?
Or, if you weren't as blind as a mole rat, you would recognize it's indicative of political pandering, and therefore is bound to appeal to virtually no one.
I mean, now that I've told you this person is a white supremacist, it's obvious what his issue is, isn't it?
See? What I tell you, in his mind, those who he brands as racist cannot be objectively correct about anything.
So I'll ask again, what do you honestly think Will's problem with this image was? Do you really believe he's this upset about Jason Momoa's character here?
Now you see, once again here, because he is ideologically possessed and drowning in envy, he cannot be honest about the current state of Hollywood, or frankly life for that matter. Hollywood has aided in the pushing of an agenda for quite some time now, and it is drowning everyone that is not a heterosexual European male in political paint and using them as pawns. And those pawns end up in projects that get labeled as garbage, hence why the pawns become indicative of poor quality. Secondly, heavier black women do not put great quantity of ass in seats. That is not racist, that is an observation. And if you happen to be an honest individual, which this video has quite clearly demonstrated you are not, you would understand the inevitable consequence of basic pattern recognition. But you won't ever do that, because you're a lying race baiter trying to push a failing narrative. But hey, if the acting gig doesn't pan out for you, you can always try and ply your trade over on CNN.
Conservatives do this thing where they'll sit in a room.
Man, him trying to play up the enlightened centrist gimmick, and then he uses a clip of a deranged anti-conservative who Drinker himself body-slammed on Twitter just a few days ago. Oh, the timing is just beautiful.
One of the tactics of grifters and their parrots is to attempt to maintain an air of plausible deniability so that when they are criticized for their bigotry, they can hide behind deflections.
I do wonder what your deflection would be, given that I proved that you blatantly lied earlier as you knowingly took footage from Drinker's con trailer video and attempted to pass it off as a full movie review.
In my previous video, I brought up one of them, the "but Ripley from Alien" defense. In short, these people try to use examples that match or are similar to the identity of a group that they regularly target to pretend they are not prejudiced against that group. In political discourse, this is probably more well known as, "but I have black friends." We know that doesn't actually work as a defense because we have actual history of slave owners falling in love with their slaves and that male sexists still love their female family members.
Didn't think you could possibly hemorrhage any more brain cells, but it's the second time you brought up slavery. And actually, yes, it does. Coincidentally, I did a video about this just recently. How yes, having one black friend does indeed make you not racist. But hey, I'll reduce it for you even further. Do you like everyone? No. There's certain things you don't want in friends and or people around you. Certain behaviors and traits. It's called having preferences. And let's say certain groups have more of those traits more often, and so you will dislike that group more often. And if you happen to find someone of that group that doesn't possess any of those traits, you would very likely get along with them. You might even become friends. You can make everyone the same race. That same prejudice will still remain because it was never based on race to begin with.
But when you have sustained and consistent campaigns against certain groups of people, it's entirely reasonable to suggest you have a dislike for those groups.
So, can I play the clips of the media again, or do you only listen to the worldview that suits your agenda?
For Will, one of those groups is women.
You do know I already like the whiskey-drinking Scotsman. You don't need to keep selling him.
Let's examine one of the most egregious cases of Will's attempts at plausible deniability. On January 5th, 2020, Drinker uploaded a video about The Mandalorian. In it, he had this to say about Gina Carano.
But for the life of me, I'll never understand why they cast Gina Carano. I mean, she's big and burly, and she obviously knows what she's doing when it comes to the fight scenes, but she's a fucking cage fighter, not an actor. Watching her trying to emote is almost as painful as watching Brie Larson trying to be funny. Oh well, it could have been worse. They could have cast Ronda Rousey.
Pretty obvious he dislikes this person and thinks she shouldn't be an actor. Fair enough. However, later that year, Gina got into a string of spats on Twitter that had her facing accusations of racism and bigotry, and she was subsequently fired by Disney. Then, a few months later, Drinker makes a video about Gina so embarrassing, you just have to hear it to believe it.
Gather round, dear viewer, as I tell you a tale. It's the tale of a woman who stood tall in the face of jealousy, cowardice, hatred, and vengeance, and dared to utter a single word. No. It's the story of the girl who wouldn't back down. She fought and won many battles and earned herself great acclaim. But the young woman had her eyes set on a higher goal, and eventually she gave up her life of fighting, travelling instead to the great kingdom of Hollywood to seek fame and glory as an actor instead. And as it turns out, her long years of training and fighting served her well, and soon she was chosen for many roles on the silver screen. Her triumph was cemented when the king and queen chose her to play a soldier, fighting amongst the stars themselves. Her fame was growing fast, but sadly, so was her list of enemies.
This is a flip-flop so insane, it could put Crocs and Birkenstock out of business.
So far, you've shown you're incapable of understanding the political landscape, the media landscape, pattern recognition, basic psychology, how math works, and you've engaged in shamelessly dishonest behavior, all in order to paint a false narrative of Drinker. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you screw this one up.
And this isn't even the only video he's made about her. Listen to this nonsense.
One of the problems with hiring strong independent women to work at your company instead of the usual assemblage of soft, entitled, like-minded corporate drones that have never had an original thought in their entire lives is that they don't always think, say, or do the things that you want them to. Case in point, Gina Carano, a former women's MMA fighter turned actor who was brought in to play Cara Dune on The Mandalorian, and at first, all seemed well. The show was a success and Carano's character soon became a fan favourite. Unfortunately, she began to ruffle feathers behind the scenes at Disney Lucasfilm by refusing to spout the same politically acceptable talking points as everyone else at the company, and even dared to express some conservative political views at times.
He spoke about this person like she was a dog, outright saying she can't even act, but as soon as she spouts nonsense and conspiracy theories and gets fired for her troubles, he's writing poems and puff pieces.
But for the life of me, I'll never understand why they cast Gina Carano. I mean, she's big and burly, and she obviously knows what she's doing when it comes to the fight scenes, but she's a fucking cage fighter, not an actor. Watching her trying to emote is almost as painful as watching Brie Larson trying to be funny.
This man is shameless. If it isn't obvious by now, he has a clear political agenda, and this colors his work. Before he knew she shared political opinions that align with his grift, she was a girl boss, only here to promote Kathleen Kennedy's woke agenda, and shouldn't have even been cast. But now, she's a shield he can use to deflect criticism about his obvious disdain for strong female characters.
What in the holy hell are you talking about, you absolute moron? The only one here with a hard-on for pushing a political agenda is you. It's like listening to a spastic trying to circle the square in verbal form. Believe it or not, I don't enjoy simply calling everyone else stupid, but my word, these attempts at takedowns are embarrassingly poor. You sound like every race-baiting git on legacy media. You're one cocktail away from whistling white supremacy. Who are you friggin' kidding here? First off, not that it matters. The clip there was from Drinker's first review that he did on The Mandalorian, which was in January of 2020. The review for Season 2, December of 2020. The Girl Who Wouldn't Back Down, February of 2021. Geez, I wonder if the second season might have endeared her character more. My first reaction was, did it ever occur to you that the writing is not particularly that great? And then lo and behold, Drinker mentions the writing right after that clip.
Watching her trying to emote is almost as painful as watching Brie Larson trying to be funny. Oh well, it could have been worse. They could have cast Ronda Rousey. The situation isn't helped by the show's dialogue, which most of the time makes the room seem like a masterpiece of artistic alliteration.
What a story, Mark.
Yeah, you can say that again.
It's clunky, dumb, obvious, and honestly feels like it was a first draft, written in a different language, and run through Google Translate on the day of shooting.
I wonder why you left that part out. Could it be because it doesn't suit your narrative, or am I being perhaps a bit too cynical? But thinking Gina Carano has nothing to do with whether or not he likes her as a person. Hell, in both videos he praises her fighting prowess. Becoming a fan favorite has nothing to do with his opinion of her, seeing as becoming a fan favorite requires the adoration of more than just him. Stop me if this is frying your tiny mind, by the way. His praising of Gina was for her giving Disney the middle finger given how they were treating her. Again, nothing to do with her acting or how he personally feels about her, or her politics. And how does any of this deflect his apparent disdain for strong female characters? Again, what the hell are you talking about? Actually, hold on a second, I just realized something. You said that Drinker does not like women, but then he will change his opinion when he hears their politics. Put two and two together there, dumbass!
Speaking of agendas, the Barbie movie and his subsequent analysis evaporated any hope I had left for this man's integrity. Listen to how he sums up the marketing of the film and then his reading of the actual film's release.
Now, before I dive into this review properly, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the hard work and genius PR campaign of the Warner Brothers marketing department. You guys really pulled off a miracle with this one, successfully duping all of us, including me, into believing that Barbie was going to be just another colourful, light-hearted, easygoing family comedy with some cheeky, self-aware humour, ironic meta-gags, and probably capped off with a blandly inoffensive female empowerment message about girls learning the value of their own potential. What none of us expected was 114 minutes of spiteful, bitter, mean-spirited, borderline unhinged hatred of men and everything even vaguely associated with them. Barbie is like the deformed, mutated rage child of Captain Marvel, Ghostbusters 2016 and She-Hulk. It is pure brain cancer in movie form, and I was genuinely shocked by the sheer, undisguised contempt this film has towards 50% of the human population.
You know, that does sound like a pretty concise review of the movie when it first came out. Only later on did Gosling become the star because the movie basically showed him, a Chad, that single-handedly used the patriarchy to turn Barbie's world into Ken's patriarchal paradise, and that feminists are all disgruntled ugly losers who will happily ruin all of society when everyone else is happy, but they are not.
Besides the fact that this is one of the most hyperbolic, nonsensical summations of this movie, how could he have possibly come to that conclusion for the film's marketing?
I swear this man gets dumber with every new iteration he tries to introduce. You're mixing the movie review with the trailer, you dillweed. Listen to what he said.
Now, before I dive into this review properly, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the hard work and genius PR campaign of the Warner Brothers marketing department. You guys really pulled off a miracle with this one, successfully duping all of us, including me, into believing that Barbie was going to be just another colourful, light-hearted, easygoing family comedy with some cheeky self-aware humour, ironic meta-gags, and probably capped off with a blandly inoffensive female empowerment message about girls learning the value of their own potential.
And then he goes into what the film was actually about, a 180 from the trailer. When Drinker talks, what happens to your mind? Does his Scottish accent permeate your hollow skull and blow common sense out through your eyeballs or something, does it? Damn near every comment you make, I'm scratching my head going, how the hell did he get to that?
It was plainly obvious that Margot's Barbie was the main character and that she would face an existential crisis.
Do you guys ever think about dying?
On top of that, they show Barbie's feet going flat, suggesting that the film would be clearly feminist in nature, as feminists have been arguing against heels for decades.
Listen here, pal, if you're gonna pay that close attention to a trailer for feminist messaging, most people are gonna think you have a foot fetish.
The marketing material also shows Barbie entering the real world and experiencing sexual assault, and I can only conclude that Drinker's media literacy is questionable at best.
Yeah, because sexual harassment is quite the common theme for a movie centered around a children's play doll.
To belabor this point, he's been caught changing the titles of his videos after a media property releases to hide his terrible perception of marketing material.
And your evidence for this is what exactly? No, I think that's your delusional conclusion because you are trying to spin a narrative about the guy and you're failing miserably at it.
And if all that wasn't enough to prove that Mr. Jordan has the integrity of a sandcastle,
he says while proving he has no integrity himself.
Here's something that was brought to my attention. On one of Drinker's live streams, he attributed a false quote to Isabella Merced about the failure of Madame Web.
Some of the stars of the film have got theories about why that is, and one of them is right here. Isabella Merced? Is that the word? Merced?
Sure. Yeah.
She said it failed for one simple reason. For the same reason that the Marvels or Bird of Prey failed, because the male audience still hides a deep contempt for everything that is starring strong, independent women.
Oh, God. The truth is the truth, I guess.
Sure. I mean, that's definitely the reason Birds of Prey failed and the Marvels. It wasn't because they were bad films that no one wanted. For sure.
Isabella was, of course, inundated with hate from parrots that took these quotes at face value because why would grifters lie to them? She then had to come out and deny these clearly false allegations, but by then, the damage was already done. To date, there has been no update, no retraction, no public apology on Twitter from Will Jordan for spreading this quote, and that's because he has a vested interest in seeing the culture war proliferate in media discourse, as this is profitable for him.
I would like to know how on earth does this perspective make any bloody sense? You claim Drinker is outspoken against the mainstream Hollywood consensus. Who exactly is funding him, watching his content? It's not Hollywood bigwigs, it's regular people. So explain how on the one hand he's against the mainstream, pro its proliferation which apparently benefits him, whilst he also wants better quality of movies which would result in less rage which would in turn supposedly rob him of his cash cow. Make that make sense.
Even if he didn't know the quote was fake, this shows the lack of research and effort he puts into his work.
If I were you, I would keep quiet about denigrating somebody else's lack of effort and research they put into their work.
No discernment, no ability to perform an investigation, and hastily attributes an obviously fake quote in a concerted effort to confirm his biases.
Is it just me, or does it feel like he's putting way too heavy an emphasis on this particular event? I don't know, something about this just feels very off.
Why would you take anything he says seriously at this point?
Considering everything he's done in this video, his constant need to call into question somebody else's integrity, all exudes this arrogant projection on a whole nother level.
How can you trust he's done the homework?
Oh my lord, make it stop. But let's play the panel's reaction again.
Some of the stars of the film have got theories about why that is, and one of them is right here. Isabella Merced? Is that the word? Merced?
Sure. Yeah.
She said it failed for one simple reason. For the same reason that the Marvels or Bird of Prey failed, because the male audience still hides a deep contempt for everything that is starring strong, independent women.
Oh, God. The truth is the truth, I guess.
Sure. I mean, that's definitely the reason Birds of Prey failed and the Marvels. It wasn't because they were bad films that no one wanted.
Okay, so, The post apparently came from the Comic Menu Facebook page, but notice their reaction to that quote. No one is surprised by that. Why? Interesting how he says, clearly false, obviously fake quote. And yet no one on the panel bothers to double check, because clearly this is a life and death situation, and the career of someone whose name Drinker didn't even know is clearly going to get mauled by the salacious scandal. This has nothing to do with confirming a bias. It's because it sounds like something you would hear from every other ovarian drag wanked up by Hollywood. Hell, they even mention other films that tanked for the same reason. It's not a bias, it's simply reverting to previous evidence. It's why no one bothered to double check it and why everyone was nodding their heads. And it's for the same reason memes like this are funny, why She-Hulk failed, and why Batwoman was a steaming pile of ass.
The suit is literal perfection.
It will be. When it fits a woman.
Yeah, I wonder why these penis-empty female-led movies all tank. It's a total mystery.
This is not the first time he's been caught manipulating a narrative. The YouTuber Pillar of Garbage exposed Drinker for lying about scenes in Glass Onion because Drinker has a political gripe with Rian Johnson, the director of Glass Onion, and The Last Jedi, a film he and his ilk have pilloried for the past 7 years because of perceived wokeness.
I am legitimately fascinated by the dome of delusion this git must reside in to say stuff like this out loud and still somehow magically claim to be objectively neutral. These people are insane.
Here's a clip.
The example Drinky gives for Rian Johnson's blatant rewriting is the scene where Blanc and, as we later see, Helen spot Duke's voyeurism.
Batista's watching his girlfriend supposedly having an affair with Miles only to be observed by Blanc. Now look at the later version of this exact same scene. Noticed how Helen's been added in here when she totally should have been visible before.
Except no, that isn't true. There's a reason the Drinker plays these clips on mute.
Drinker does all of these reviews with the sound off. In fact, I'm just going to skip this whole next point. It's 10 seconds of a review that lasts over 10 minutes. It's so overly pedantic, it just makes you roll your eyes and say, fuck off.
Why would Drinker do that? Is he incompetent? Or is he a blatant liar?
You know, we can ask you the same question about your use of his trailer review and trying to pass it off as a full movie one. Did you do that because you're incompetent or because you're a pathetic hypocrite? There's like a certain level of sociopathic with people like this, constantly projecting meanwhile they're guilty as sin of the same thing they accuse everyone else of doing. Whose idea was it to do that again? Probably some people in stylish uniforms. Far as the rest of the clip is concerned, who cares? Your credibility is gone, and no one watching this video is going to take you seriously after this. You've lied before, and your envy-fueled prejudice is now on full display.
These are the only two choices you have, and both of them are damning for his reputation. And yet, he doesn't seem to care, because I guess his followers don't seem to care. I mean, he publicly demonstrates that he can't keep up with basic logic all the time.
Considering your conduct in this video, I would tread lightly casting aspersions on somebody else's ability to wield logic, seeing as you have demonstrated a severe lack of capacity to apply it. Meanwhile, a conceited South African is tearing you to shreds.
Look at this tweet from Star Wars Holocron. They are very obviously making the point that sometimes a show's first season isn't always where it finally ends up, with a couple examples including The Clone Wars and Breaking Bad. When Will saw this, how do you fail at understanding the point this hard? This is one of two things. He either understands the point being made but is attempting to misrepresent the point to, again, galvanize an already volatile audience against a contentious product, thereby sending his parrots to harass this account.
Oh, do tell, why do you think it's contentious?
Which actually fucking happened. Or he doesn't understand the purpose of an analogy.
Okay, not to belabor the point too much here, but that's not an analogy. That's a simple comparison, as Drinker points out in the retweet. And his statement is straight up mocking them, because the comparison is a pile of arse. It's a bit of satire. Breaking Bad had a budget of roughly $3 million per episode, and their first season had 7 episodes, which amounts to roughly $21 million, and most importantly, could keep you hitting the play button. Whereas The Acolyte had a jaw-dropping $180 million to play with, or burn in this case. And the only thing that made you want to hit was the damn TV and everyone else involved with that abomination of a production. Hence why it got cancelled after only 1 season, because it was arse and no one was watching it. You claim to follow math. Can you tell the difference here, or did you lie about that as well? And do you think there will be any talk about why the Acolyte failed, or will he continue to believe Drinker can summon subjects and command them to attack something like he's some kind of all-powerful monarch? I wish he could do that. Be pretty based, actually.
Stupid people do this all the time. You'll say, well, fish swim and Olympic sprinters run, with the underlying logic being how they locomote, and the stupidest person you know will say, Did you just compare a fish to an Olympian? And this is exactly why analogies are on IQ tests.
Yeah, you see, in that analogy, those two things are different. What they have in common is the movement. Whereas here, you're comparing two of the same thing. What is the common thread of your analogy? I would suggest maybe lay off the IQ remarks. Intelligence is not your forte.
But I'm willing to be charitable to Will.
Ah, you fuck.
And suggest it's the former, that he knows the point that's being made but is misrepresenting it to fit the narrative he's trying to push. I mean, the alternative is to suggest he's low IQ. And I would never do that.
Oh, God, the left really can't meme, can they? How is this tweet pushing a narrative? This is one man mocking idiots high on copium. No more, no less. Get off the internet and touch grass, you sad bastard. Maybe shag a glory hole and get rid of that hate boner you have.
His Twitter alone is an embarrassment of narrative pushes from platform-boosting known anti-black racists like Kang Min Lee.
Wait, is he? It's no wonder he follows me on Twitter. But secondly, look at this tweet. Every protagonist in the Assassin's Creed series has been aligned with the geography of the location. And then when an Asian takes issue with someone not from Asia being the protagonist in a game set in feudal Japan, this is your example of anti-blackness? Are you trying to one-up your own imbecility here? How fucking tone-deaf stupid are you?
To even shit-talking PETA.
Base because they cringe?
Because he perceives them to be left-wing, I guess? I don't know, that last one was just amusing to me. So I bring you back to this tweet. What do you honestly think he's saying here?
That it contains political pandering, demographics, and variables that don't sell. It evokes a visceral reaction in normal people that causes them to avert their attention away from all of this because it's an eyesore. An obvious observation that either an idiot doesn't see or an ideologue will willingly choose to ignore.
I think it's silly to adhere to political sides because at some point in time, you're going to have to defend nonsense to maintain the integrity of being on that side.
I do love using people's own words against them.
So far, we've demonstrated he will lie or manipulate a narrative.
No, we established quite early that narrative pushing is your gimmick. And if I took a shot every time you said the phrase narrative in this video, I would be suffering from liver failure. Trust me, I am drinking throughout making this video. Hell, I'm likely going to be drinking as I'm editing this bit right now.
Use a member of a group that he regularly targets as a form of plausible deniability.
No, he doesn't, and your argument for that was incredibly weak, by the way.
That he clearly has issues with minority groups.
Because they're used as political pawns to push
the message.
But seriously, even if he did, who cares? Who the hell are you to tell anyone they have to like or coexist with people who don't look like them? I can dislike whoever I damn well please. We all seem to have forgotten this thing called the right to association.
And that he perceives women being in these roles to be a political push.
Yeah, because the tanking failure of female leads being toxically masculine and or uber-feminist is really disputing that notion.
Which of the humans in this image fits all that criteria?
I love how, unlike him, any sane person would look at all the factors objectively just listed and go, yep, those are the reasons why this won't sell, instead of being a loser online trying to call someone racist and shaming them for noticing reality. It's hilarious coming from someone who claims to follow rationality, logic, science, and math, isn't it? All of that goes out the window to be replaced by this thing called emotion because he reasons like a woman.
What this person does is not honest critique.
You have no power here.
He looks for ways he can jimmy in alt-right political talking points under the guise of being a movie reviewer.
No, that's what you are attempting to convince people he's doing because you are an unhinged leftist and therefore deeply envious of his popularity and deathly afraid to confront the reality that heterosexual European men will continue to be the top-selling ticket for the movie industry.
And I know his fan base doesn't want to believe that he is prejudiced against minority groups.
No, I very much like him for that reason, and I will cheers to that. You, on the other hand, have yet failed to grasp why that prejudice exists, and your only go-to conclusion is racism, as you call everyone else around you low IQ. The reality is you're either very disingenuous or incredibly stupid.
But after everything you've seen here, if you're an honest person,
you will say, well done, Spoon, like the video, and hopefully say you enjoyed me thoroughly debunking this dishonest race baiter.
You're at the very least asking questions.
Actually, the main question I'm asking myself is what kind of midwitted plebs would listen to your opinions? It's low-resolution blue-pilling swill.
Why would he bring up conversations about race in films where that isn't the focus?
Because Hollywood doesn't ever shut up about diversity, you dingus.
Why would he lie and manipulate footage of a film made by a person that he politically disagrees with?
I have no evidence for any of this, and your credibility has been burned. No one has any reason to take you seriously after watching this video.
Why is he spreading misinformation about a woman and attributing political positions to her? What does any of this have to do with film? This is because he's not a film reviewer. He's a political ideologue that complains almost exclusively about mainstream media to push rhetoric.
Yeah, it's not like the mainstream media is a key component in pushing a narrative, and if you don't like it, you would be outspoken against it or anything. Hell, you could be against mainstream media with no political bent at all, up until some idiot on the internet insinuates you have one. Let's be honest here for once, shall we? This man is a walking case of projection. You still haven't said why any of this is objectively bad other than espousing the most mundane talking points I can get from any spaced-out liberal woman who's drunk before noon.
In fact, you'll never see him talking about or promoting anything that's not mainstream unless it's an attempt at a narrative push. So yeah, he'll talk about Squid Game or Kingdom because they're mainstream, but do any of you believe he cares about Korean media at all? You know, because Korean women are probably some of the most feminist on earth, to the point that it heavily contributes to their birth rate decline and the swath of strong female protagonists that permeate Korean media properties? He has no idea, because he can only regurgitate talking points against what's in the mainstream, because you can't grift on things people don't know about.
Now hold on a second there, because you said something curious. You can't grift on things people don't know about. You just said he's pushing a political agenda. Why the hell would he talk about non-mainstream things then? Especially from another country where the narrative wouldn't have any weight. See, this is why the term grifter needs to piss off. It's supposed to be someone who peddles things they don't believe in for money. All you have done in this entire video is accuse him of pushing a political agenda. You haven't even said how, other than he happens to align with other people that you deem your political nemesis. How is he pushing an agenda yet also grifting? As I said before, if one of his main sources of revenue apparently comes from hating on Hollywood wank, where's the incentive for him to speak out against anything that also produces his cash cow? Again, none of this makes any sense.
This is why his review for season 4 of The Boys is what it is. He admits he hasn't even watched it, yet claims it has destroyed its audience. His source being the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes.
So, it was off to Rotten Tomatoes for me to check out the reviews. Not the critic reviews, of course, because nobody in their right mind gives a shit what those fucking shills have got to say about anything anymore. I'm talking about the audience reviews, which is the only semi-reliable barometer for quality these days, and oh.
And once again, context is needed, because much like the Kong fiasco, he's being dishonest. The video he pulled from is called The Boys Season 4, How Did It Turn Rotten? If you bothered to watch Drinker's video, he said, even though he gave it a Drinker Recommender badge earlier on during the first season, the show got stale and lost its hard satirical edge and became more pandering mainstream bollocks, hence why he lost interest. He mentions how Stranger Things had listened to their fans earlier, and so the off to Rotten Tomatoes comes a bit over a quarter into the video, to see if they happen to pull off a Stranger Things-esque kind of comeback. They don't, at which point he proceeds to talk about a recent interview with the showrunner who talks about him shoving in his political perspectives, and Drinker feels that soured the product. Considering he had this feeling before the 4th season, hence why he lost interest to begin with, reading through the comments on Rotten merely confirmed his suspicions. Make sense now?
Besides the fact that TV show reviews on Rotten Tomatoes aren't verified, meaning they are subject to review bombs, why doesn't he keep this same energy with, I don't know, The Marvels, Black Widow, or Quantumania, movies that have pretty good audience scores?
Because those are movies and not TV series. Duh.
Seems like Drinker is the living embodiment of this meme, doesn't it?
Oh, for heaven's sake, not only can the left not meme, they can't even apply the context correctly. It wasn't a review, it was why this series went stale, and you're trying to apply that formula to film. Again, what dome of the dimwitted do you reside in that convinced you uploading this would be a good idea?
Of course he'll never come out and say, I don't want to see black people in lead roles, or I'm tired of female protagonists, like The Quartering stupidly did.
Shout out to Jeremy from The Quartering, absolutely based, I thoroughly approve and concur.
It's because being that he's selling something, he has something to lose, so he has to communicate in dog whistles to maintain the facade of plausible deniability.
What the fuck does that even mean?
And Will, I know you're watching, so let me finally address you directly.
I know you're watching fucking Delusions of Grandeur much, Junior. You spend this entire video being so deceitful and dishonest walking into a church might be a lethal endeavor for you, and you have the gall to think your word carries weight? My God, the level of arrogance in this one is surreal.
Film reviews are not your personal soapbox to air out your grievances with minority groups and those that advocate for them.
Oh God, the cringe. Someone asked Tim Walz for a tampon. The raging feminine energy from this one must be plugged immediately.
It's irresponsible to your, my, and every other audience that consumes film and teaches them nothing about the art form.
Neither does shoving in your politics and telling everyone else not to watch if they don't like it. Then again, you live in Los Angeles, and I suspect you would lick a casting couch if it meant you can get off YouTube and stop nagging better creators like the attention-seeking gimp that you are.
You create a hostile environment for neutral people that may stumble across your slop, where they may assume that film criticism is full of people like you.
Good God, I wish the movie industry was full of more people like Drinker. Or more base, we get better films. I think Hollywood would do well to listen to Disparu and Mauler.
You do a disservice to the craft and give the rest of film YouTube a bad name.
No, only you think this because you're a thin-skinned race-betting bitch.
I think I speak on behalf of every reasonable film reviewer out there.
You most certainly do not, you arrogant bastard.
Go away now.
Oh, good God, if only. Make it permanent, because that was one of the most embarrassingly piss-poor attempts at denigrating somebody's character I have ever seen. So many lies, mischaracterizations, dishonest misrepresentation, and frankly, just plain stupidity. Let me end this video by explaining this whole phenomenon, because it's actually very simple to understand. If you happen to be someone who notices the regime is trying to shove its cringeworthy subpar politics into literally everything, you will find yourself being branded as some kind of political renegade if you simply dislike its current trajectory, give it the middle finger, and tell it to piss off. Man, that was an ordeal. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a lot of whiskey to drink. And seeing as I just offended the drinker, cheers for watching. But anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.